and good morning. Thanks for those who got to join us. Sorry for the late notice, but it's been a pretty hectic morning reviewing everything that's going on. And I wish I was joining you with more conclusive news, but you'll see at the moment, the models still do not agree with what is going on, which makes everything so incredibly frustrating. But let's get into it because we've got lots of chats about. Don't want you, everybody has to go to work. We don't want to make you late for work. So let's do it. Let's get straight into our look at the models. And so we're going to start with EC because we've got it all fresh out here on the screen ready for you to go. And we will look at just the current situation first. We'll pull up the radar and satellite picture, and then we'll look at what the models are doing for you and try and decipher just exactly what in the world is going on at the moment, because it still, as I said, is just inconclusive. G'day, Thomas. Good morning. Thanks for joining us out there in good old Campbelltown. Okay, so we can see here, you can see already the disturbance, the upper system, and the moisture that is flooding in from the Coral Sea in the Western and South Pacific. You can see is really starting to fire up. You can see, look at that top of those clouds there, really crispy, chunky white, which says there's quite strong convection. And you can see also from the top of the clouds, these are the weird little lines and that sort of shapes, and you can see indicates there's quite good upper support, like upper divergence and winds, and dragging the dry air away, which is good for longevity of the system. Really, we've got this, we'll put this on loop and behind it, so we've got a bit of a loop going in the background there. It won't help with the visible, but anyway, it doesn't matter. And we've really got this, this is an upper system coming in from the west here, as you can see. We've got the system coming in from, the northwest here. You've got another system coming in from the Bight later, which will kick up the stuff. You've also got this influx of moisture you can see here from the Pacific, and you can see it just drags across here as it loads. You'll watch just moisture pouring in. It's evidenced by this sort of stratocumulus you can see here on the satellite picture, just like a thick blanket of cotton wool pouring in when windy decides they're going to buffer. You can see here just absolutely pouring in, and you can notice the last few frames, if you're paying attention, it starts to kink away from that sort of more southeasterly track it had, a bit more of an easterly track, and then we'll start to see that sort of northeasterly dips just starting to happen, just as this trough starts to, and this system starts to get over the water off Queensland here, and then starts to also intensify and then give us, potentially what's going to be coming next. We can see there's obviously some storms already forming off the coast from us, which is a good sign that the trough is amplifying already, and then the southern edge is already starting to push across the water and get activated. You can see already that sort of subtly pushing up underneath it. So interesting times ahead. What we ever get to, what we officially get to, who knows? It's, as I said, it's still incredibly up in the air. We'll just zoom in now to give poor old Windy a bit of a break, so it's not buffering too much, and we'll focus just on our area and let that buffer for a second, and then we'll hop on into the models and we're actually going to look at the next 24 hours or so, because that's pretty the most important now. No good looking at the longer term stuff because we're now into nowcasting, and so the accuracy of the models does tend to drop off a bit because, again, they are playing catch up. But there's quite strong solar convection, as you can see. Already got some good falls moving down that northeast corner, which we saw yesterday in the rainfall. Look at that, just absolutely pretty savage convection up there, really thick upper cloud, which is a good sign that that's plenty of air has been shafted up into the sky. And you can see here this subtly just starting to push in already, just very slowly. And it's not meant to be at all strong or gusty at this stage. It'll just be moderate sort of winds initially as it pushes through, and we'll probably have mostly sunny skies this morning until probably the late morning or even early afternoon, and we'll start to see some cloud increase as the system does start to, well, this is based on one model. Again, there's no consensus whatsoever still. The general pattern is, of course, that this trough does move south and amplify, and again, where it does and what happens next is, again, still really up in the air. I haven't seen all of the models. I had a quick look in preparing the forecast, obviously, but I could see from our hyper local forecasting models that I got set up, the inconsistency in rainfall totals, and I'm like, okay, so it's still not really resolved on exactly what comes next and what gets who gets what rain. All right, enough looking at that. Let's go and have a look at the models per se, and we'll see. We'll look at winds. We're going to look at 24 hours, so we're going to look at winds first, and then we'll look at the rainfall uh, for you, so we can actually see what the hell is going on. All right, so as I said, we're starting with EC. We'll start at probably from about lunchtime, because this is when it starts to, from EC anyway, it starts to really, the activity starts to sort of kick into gear. You can see here the trough starting to push down. You can see the isobars, the bend in the elbow and the isobars indicating the trough pushing south and into amplifying. And you can see that slowly sort of pushing through us and then curving back in as it feeds into that inland system up off in the inland Queensland, which is starting to move off the coast, which is also what will trigger. You can see those easterlies starting to bend into northeasterlies and starting to increase in intensity, which is as the trough does intensify and suck it in and grab that fuel from the Pacific and the Coral Sea. And then moving into this afternoon, we'll go into about 4 o'clock. We can see again, really starting to really intensify quite dramatically. You can see the areas, that pink shading and some purple shading, which does indicate, quite strong gusty winds. And still you can see as well, this band of southerlies that we've been observing over a few days lying along the coast starting to increase, especially off the coast and sort of scraping some of the coastal areas, especially in the Illawarra. Not so much us, maybe in the far southeast and exposed areas around that Royal National Park area. Not so much at this stage in terms of us. And then moving into tonight, as that trough does push down and intensify, you can see now the bulging isobars pushing way down into almost the Victorian border, which is what we've seen in the last few days. You can see those southerlies really starting to really get sucked in response to the amplification of that trough. Again, you can see the massive slab of west easterlies and northeasterlies in response to it, developing quite incredibly, just a bit like a big vacuum cleaner. And then we'll hop into overnight. And we can see here, and this is, I think, the biggest shift in EC overnight. Again, no low there for Freak Cities listing up. There you go, bro. No low there. But anyway, in all seriousness, still a deep trough and getting stronger. You can see here now the purple's really around the focus of the trough, the central convergence area, but then also way out here into the northeast in the southern Coral Sea as well. And that's going to enhance, pulling in a lot more moisture. You can see the southerlies now starting to get gusty on the coast for us overnight. And then especially into also the exposed coastal areas around that Newcastle to Port Stephens area, where the coast abuts out or juts out and starts to sort of take that more northeasterly track. They'll get this a lot more initially because of that, because it catches it. And of course, Jervis Bay there, where it sticks out as well, grabs those southerlies. And then hopping into, we'll go quickly through it. We can see here, into early Tuesday morning now. Again, a deep trough, really anchored off the coast here, and that's pretty close to an ECL there, to be fair, even though the digital, the software Windy doesn't necessarily identify it as a low pressure system, and that's the point that was missed in the chat comments last night, is because, oh my God, it says low on there. You got to remember that this is the Windy's digital application of what the algorithm says. But I mean, this is a good example where it's actually wrong, and I think there it's probably on EC anyway. That's pretty much an East Coast low there, and not far off it. If it is not, it's the structure, whether it gets the technical threshold of an East Coast low or not. But this is the sort of structure you would see with an East Coast low, which is its own circulation, as you can see here, really around here, and then a trough feeding in. And you can see here the trough extends up the back. We can see this area of convergence off the coast. And then you can see on the southern side, it extends the coastal trough down, because you can see where the winds are all sort of coming together there, the wind streams. I think they're called, is isotex is temperature, isobars is pressure, something. I think it might be isoheights. Is that wind? That's areas of wind, I think, isoheights, if I remember. We'll work it out. So you get, so trough extends this way on the southern side and then on that side. So it's very north-south aligned at this stage. heading into tomorrow morning, and whatever happens tomorrow morning, whether it's a coastal trough, it's a low, it's a Tasman low, ECL, whatever badge it gets in the end. On EC anyway, it's looking windy and wet for us, and then we'll look at other models yet. But you can see here, definitely close to that threshold. Although I don't know, because you see here the wind streams from the software doesn't indicate much, but then you go at the actual gust and you can see 62 knots. So this is where again, like don't necessarily follow what the labels that the digital systems put on these things. You just got to look at the actual patterns itself. And then getting into tomorrow morning, we can see a really again, it was occluded and now it's sort of not occluded. It sort of flicks back and forth between nothing, a trough, and then a low. So even the poor old system of Windy is having real issues in identifying what the hell is going on, and it's more likely than not flagging that sort of hybridy system we saw last time pummel the coast, and just the general widespread area of quite low pressure is probably more indicative of actually that sort of system again, that coastal trough, with an embedded vorticity, but at this stage, we'll work out and see in the wash in the long run. But I mean, EC sort of does tend to lean towards an East Coast low at some stage. I mean, like, again, here, it's more back to a trough you're sort of looking. So it sort of fluctuates between the two. So I'm going to go with what we had last time, which is like a deep coastal trough with hybrid ECL characteristics. There you go. That's called a hedge each way, a bet each way. Again, on EC anyway, you can see, don't have to explain too much. As you can see, it's whatever it does end up getting a badge. It's still quite windy, pretty savage weather, especially on the coast. Pretty strong winds up into the damaging aspect there for periods of time, especially between the Illawarra and Port Stephens, and also around that coastal area in the southern mid-north coast, around that Foster sort of Taree area. And you can see here quite a large area of no winds here. Again, I don't know, wait. The software says a low, but you can see where it's identifying the label circulation center does not match where the actual area of no winds are. So that really does look like a circulation center there, to be honest, because of the size and the cylindrical effect of that, what it looks like. But again, who knows? It's a label. I don't know. When the software doesn't the models still don't agree this close to an event, it just makes me concerned about what's going to happen in terms of actual structure. But anyway, we can see here it really starts to wind up and deep into 984. But you can see that again, that's not on AC. It's not ACL there at all. That's I don't know what that is. I mean, you look at the wind pattern there. There's no real circulation. It's wrapping into something deep. I don't know. Let's just call that hybrid ECL deep coastal trough system. I don't know. Whatever it's called, let's just give it a badge. But you can see it definitely gets into really quite deep territory, 980s sitting off the coast. And you can see that again, that persistent gale force, damaging winds, up to destructive winds, sometimes wedge of winds just off the coast and just clipping the coastal stream. And then we can see again, here comes that trough bulging through on that late Wednesday, Thursday, which EC's been pretty consistent. You can see now that's definitely not an ACL or a Tasman low, anything like that. It's just another trough. You can see how quite massive area of sort of low winds, but here comes that trough, that bulge, and you watch it here over the western side here, and you watch the whole system sort of pivot and tilt, and it throws up this trough. As you can see, it comes across there. It gives it like a real surge of southeasterlies and southerlies, and then buggers off into NZ. And I said we're only going to do 24 hours, so let's go back to doing that. We'll just focus on 24 hours, otherwise we'll just run out of time. Anybody will be late for work. All right, let's look at what GFS is saying. Definitely sort of agreeing in some respects in the actual setup as EC. Again, coastal trough sort of deepening and amplifying off the coast. GFS doesn't have anything close to what EC has in terms of that discrete sort of vorticity or circulation center along the coast. GFS has everything off the coast, and then it develops, even though the badge hitter, say low. You can see it's quite that typical deep coastal trough Nike sort of flick going on here. But it might get close to an ECL status, might not, who knows? It might get a Tasman low status, who knows? It just there's not. It tends at some stage to look like it, and then it goes back to like this here, where it's quite clearly more a trough setup. But whatever it is, it's 989. It's deep, and it's going to cause pretty strong weather in terms of winds, especially for the coast. And you can see it even has that wobble going on. And then into Wednesday, again, you can see it really just bugger off very quickly to the east, which is unusual. But then it does have that bulge, this trough that extends back very much like AC does overnight Wednesday into early Thursday, which will bring on a surge of sort of rain and sort of nasty winds, no doubt. This is really frustrating that they don't even agree on just the very slightest outlook. So close to an event. All right, let's have a look from lunchtime here. We've got Icon. So very much aligns with what GFS and EC are saying initially, to have a trough dipping down, coastal trough, and amplifying or intensifying, dragging in that quite strong to gale force northeasterly easterly winds, dragging quite a lot of moisture from the Coral Sea. You see again here, Icon differs significantly from EC, and in fact, it's pretty close to GFS in terms of just the location and the winds. You can see here that's more a trough, maybe a quasi Tasman low there. It's no impact but the circulation on the coastal strip at all, so it's definitely not an east coast low, because that's one of the rules. It must be impacting the coast circulation anyway. And again, more a trough signature, but who knows? It's vorticity in the trough. It's just a label at this stage. It's really, but you can see a lot of Icon is keeping nearly everything off the coast here. Some moderate to gusty winds at that stage, but anything like GFS or EC anywhere along the coast. Icon has, and we start to see some pretty strong winds tomorrow morning sometime. You can see as it does amplify and actually deepen and retrograde back towards the west as that upper trough system comes through and starts to come through, and again really actually starts to wind up there now. Now that's probably an east coast low, getting very close to it there. Where you can see again the actual circulation and stuff is off the coast. Is actually not impacting the coast at all, other than there's very very outer bands, and technically an ECL should be interacting with the coast because that's what they're known for. So whether that's these hybrid situations or who knows what the hell's going on with this. It's really, but you can see here pretty strong winds then from about Tuesday morning in Icon. You can see as that low does amplify and deepen quite significantly and really wind up. Got a beautiful little circulation center there. You can see very clearly it's got an occluded circulation there. ECL, Tasman low, who cares? It gets close to the coast. It's still the very edge of the outer bands. You can see quite clearly how concentrated the western side is. The eastern side, of course, is back way up into almost Noumea, but the western side is very much limited to just that coastal strip. The upper areas, of course, will get some pretty strong winds in response to upper level shear and obviously stuff being dragged into this system. But generally, the coastal stuff is very much confined just to that coastal strip. Very, very focused on there. And then you can see this again, this southwestern extension of the system starting to wrap in. The south coast is going to cop it under Icon and maybe the Illawarra as well. And then, of course, into Wednesday, you can see just a general response as it drops to 980. And that's definitely a Tasman low. It's way out offshore now. But you can see the focus. You can see that's that northeasterly aspect, and that easterly surge is totally gone. And it's now this westerly wrapping around in as that upper system does come through. And if we drag it out, you can see there's still the trough down here well to the south, feeding some of the moisture in, but generally it's ploughing into now Victoria and Tasmania and this low is definitely its sort of own beast by then. Very, very nasty system out there Wednesday. And thankfully, most of it is well out to the coast, although there will be some pretty nasty winds right along the east coast associated with those mid-level winds as that upper system comes through and ramps it up into 19, you can see, but generally speaking, the coast actually gets a reprieve other than the far south coast, which is an unusual circumstance considering that the coast is sort of missing out. And then it also then has this wraparound trough, you can see here, very much like GFS and Axis EC did, sorry. This trough, you can see the bulging out here, this surge of southerlies, southeasterlies through late Wednesday into Thursday, and then before it buggers off to our Kiwi friends. All right, we'll quickly check Axis and then we'll look at some of the rainfall figures, rainfall projections. Let's go Axis. All right, again, so you can see again, very similar trough pushing down the east coast and amplifying, and in response, the northeasterly inflow and easterly inflow significantly ramps up into very strong gale winds, dragging all that moisture in and feeding this system. And again, pretty much in terms of location, Axis is pretty close to what Icon had, and to some extent GFS. EC definitely treats the system completely differently, so I'm going to think that EC is probably going to have the heavier rainfall totals without even seeing it yet. Axis is probably more just like gusty showers, I think, at this stage, but we'll see them in a minute. But again, still pretty much what we've seen. Starts to impact the Hunter, so that southern mid-north coast and the exposed coastal areas of the Illawarra and Sydney through Tuesday as it wobbles around. But again, that's more a coastal trough than it is anything else. You can see here, it's really, even though the digital software labels it as a low 999, don't forget that a trough low pressure is a trough low pressure. So it's a broad area of low pressure, not just a circulation center. This to me is definitely much that Nike flick of a very deep coastal trough that would have some of that those ECL hybrid sort of characteristics, just like we had that one in May, which was not an ECL and it was not a Tasman low. It was a deep coastal trough, but man, it acted like an ECL. So again, you can see this really extensive, deep northeasterly surge and feed into this. It's wobbling around there again and really hammering the coast, really from the south coast right up into the southern mid-north coast on Axis anyway for Tuesday. Again, you can see this very sort of trophy looking signature of the inflow area on the eastern side and the return flow area on the western side. Classic trough situations here. No real closed or occluded circulation center or low level circulation center at all. Really just a big, deep sort of coastal trough. But you can see it really hammering in terms of winds. In fact, Tuesday to Wednesday for Sydney as well, 60 knots, which is up almost into destructive winds. So Axis is definitely worse for us in terms of winds. In fact, you've got pretty severe winds right across the whole of the Sydney basin for most of Tuesday and into Wednesday. So as I've been saying for days now, like for me, winds are going to be the focus of this system more than rain. And we'll see what Axis is going to give us. I mean, here comes that trough extension too, but you can see Axis has this quite a lot earlier. Again, you're looking for that sort of bulge in the isobars here in the west, and you watch how it tilts and pivots around, and it throws those like gravity waves of southeasterlies and southerlies up the coast, and Axis gets rid of it quicker, and then comes so it has one on Tuesday and it has a second coming through on Wednesday, maybe Thursday as well. So Storm Cat wanted to get out, and you can see that sort of Thursday coming through. Here comes the leaf blower, man, just perfect timing. But it doesn't have it anywhere as near defined as what we saw, and then we can see it quickly clearing off late Thursday into Friday, which is what we've sort of been forecasting, and we've been watching for a while now. So clearly Tuesday and Wednesday are going to be the days in terms of most severe weather potential. Axis, of course, out of all of them, I think has probably the worst winds for us. And I'm guessing that when we look at the rainfall now, EC will probably have the most rainfall for us. We'll look at some. We'll zoom in now. Don't worry, we didn't go too far. We'll go in and actually look at projected rainfall for the next period of time. So you can see, as I put in my forecast, you can see coastal showers will start to pop around sort of late this evening, but they're only light this stage. I'll put the forecast of weather up so we can see just it's not much at all. at all. And you can see those figures there are rainfall figures for the period of time that we got up. And they do start to tend going from isolated to scattered on EC anyway across the night. And you can see just as that trough deep amplifies off the coast and whatever you want to call it, ECL, Tasman Low, coastal trough, I don't care, give it a badge, call it what you want to do, but I'm just calling what the models are showing. As that instability does deepen, you can see then that onshore flow associated with it starts to drag in some heavier falls, especially for the coastal areas. Still isolated, it's just scattered sort of showers into the west of Sydney. And Tuesday, you get these sort of inflow bands into whatever's going on, clipping the coast of Sydney with some decent falls there, especially in the Illawarra and Sydney. The Hunters just tend to miss out a little bit just because of the that location on EC anyway, whereas the main convergent bands, you can see these lines here, so they're like convergent bands or bands convergent, whatever you want to call it, which is basically, you know, where the westerly system's pushing into the circulation of this system over the Tasman. That's where they're colliding, and it's basically squeezing the moisture out of the air. So that's where you'll get those massive falls, and you can see that this don't get a lot coming across us at all. Now this is that kick around we'll be watching on Wednesday evening into Thursday. You can see that band coming through. We should start to see that pushing in from the southeast and EC soon. Is it going to bring it? No, it's basically clears it out. So it's interesting. Yeah, doesn't give much from that sort of kick around end of the trough. Just brings a real clearing pattern. So again, we see most of the heavier stuff from EC anyways, from sort of Tuesday morning through to Wednesday lunchtime, and that's it. It goes after that back to sort of showery overnight. Even on EC now, there's really nothing there that says to me flood advice, to be honest. I mean, if you look at the falls, there's no real falls in the catchment areas. Those reds and pinks and oranges that you need, and those whites to really sustain any sort of riverine increases. Bizarre. So that's Axis. What am I doing? Oh, the wrong model. That was Axis. So Axis has got some decent rain for change. Not bad. All right, let's look at EC. I need to click what I'm clicking. I'm too busy focusing on the screen. All right, so here's EC's take a view of the world. So again, Axis also has showers from tonight as well. So that's pretty much, we're going to see some stuff activity from tonight, this evening. Here's EC's take of the world. You can see a lot broader in terms of the rainfall bands. And that's not surprising given the location. And I was going to say before, and I saw Hunter not getting much, I'm like, what? That should have triggered me then to say that was the wrong model. Axis, EC, like just really sort of steady accumulation falls, really nothing heavy, some pretty decent falls, heavy falls into the Hunter. And then we see sort of Tuesday lunchtime, those bands starting to push in across now, and some persistent sort of good falls there for a couple of hours. But again, nothing that you would say is a flood threat. Some good showers scraping here Tuesday night, some good heavy rain there, especially in the coast of Illawarra. Some good stuff pushing over to the back now. There you go, that's pretty what they're basing that on there. So they're definitely going with the EC scenario. That definitely would cause some stream level rises there. You can see quite persistent falls across that upper sort of catchment area here. Again, not so much in the upper of the Hawkesbury area, like the Nepean Hawkesbury catchment and the Wallandilly there. And then we've got this wraparound trough from that south, as I was talking about. In fact, it's going to bring some snow to the western Great Dividing Range, which is interesting. There's going to be definitely some cold air associated with that. I can see here quite massive patches of snow, basically west of Genolan Caves, even almost out to Bathurst, so that's pretty good. And you can see that clearing effect, and then some gusty showers after that. All right, let's go to Icon. I reckon the Icon is going to be pretty dry in terms of this, because we can see just from the pattern alone, it's pretty much different. Shower starting tonight, so we're pretty all consistent. There's going to be some showers starting from tonight, and you can see some coastal stuff, definitely some heavier coastal stuff into Tuesday, and we got into Tuesday lunchtime now. You can see that band gets close to the coast. Southern Illawarra looks like it gets some. Definitely picking up Tuesday night for Icon as that system retrogrades to the west and deepens. Some brief heavy stuff, but mainly light showers, light moderate rain. Illawarra doing better. Some lightning there is always a good sign for good falls, but again, it stays away from Sydney. Sydney, you can see basically the whole of Sydney shower free most of from early Wednesday morning through Wednesday as that that icon pulls that system away, uh, and that wraparound band, clips us, but again, not a real lot. Interesting. All right, we'll quickly check out GFS and then I'll show you the accumulations for the next few days. So pretty much, so the GFS is agreeing. So they all four agree finally that the showers tonight are going to be increasing. So we're starting to see isolated showers from around maybe 8, 7, 8, 9 o'clock tonight, tending to scattered overnight and pushing west. And then tomorrow GFS, Axis, and EC do agree on showers, scattered showers, periods of rain, and I would say some moderate to heavy falls possible, especially in those coastal areas. You can see pretty much that GFS and EC are hand in hand in terms of that little blob of intense rain Tuesday night over the back of the Nepean Hawkesbury there in the Illawarra. You can see, and it does extend through Sydney quite a lot, but there's nothing majorly massive there or severe. Just some pretty good moderate accumulations there. I mean, definitely would see some flash flooding with that if that was to come off in some suburbs. Whether it's enough for anything to really kick off the Nepean Hawkesbury, I guess we'll see if it does happen or not. I mean, on that scenario alone, if that sort of persistent rain was over the back of the catchments like that, it definitely would kick up some inflows in here. But you can see this back of the area here, which is what really does drive the Hawkesbury downstream from Warragamba Dam to really start to respond. It's not overly, massive here. Definitely some, if this is to come off, you definitely would see some minor flooding in that Nepean here, up through the back of Campbelltown, Camden, up into the 3 dams or 4 dams there, but nothing in terms of the rest of Sydney. I don't see anything that sort of worries the streams and creeks in Sydney. Just some good rain around. Definitely will get some responses in the stream levels, but and you see GFS backs are completely off, and then has that wraparound sort of trophy effect, southerly change effect on Thursday, some snow as well, like EC did, and so GFS EC looks like they've teamed up to be buddies in this event. Although GFS does drop EC on the Wednesday component and basically focuses nearly everything on the Tuesday component with a little bit into maybe overnight Wednesday, but basically clearing it out like similar to Icon. So, that's almost GFS is almost the connector between Icon and I think even Axis had that sort of clearing pattern on Wednesday, didn't it? Yeah. Early showers, stuff like that. And actually Axis is different. It actually has the system. It does have it, just has it a little bit later than GFS and EC did. Interesting. All right, let's look at the next 36 hours for you in terms of accumulation. Quickly, we'll go here. So let's start from we start from about 5 because we'll start from about 7 because that's when we sort of start to see falls, and we'll go through to Wednesday at night. Just gives us a good period of time. So what's that? 2 days? That's not 2 days, 4 hours. Is it? Oh, wow, time flies. There's nothing that you would consider flooded looking falls there. Some pretty solid good falls though, up to 30s out in the west and up to 90s in the coast. No one will sneeze at that. But again, look at this area here, which is what really will drive those stream responses. Not a lot. Good falls in the Illawarra. So that's Axis. Let's see what EC now. It says, hundreds on the eastern Hunter. The Illawarra is going to do much better, of course, only up to 200 mils. That doesn't surprise me because there's the escarpment there along the areas, and of course that where the Great Dividing Range pushes right to the coast of Kiama there, would catch those southerlies especially and just milk them for every single drop they've got of rain. But again, nothing massively over in the back of these catchments to really cause anything to sort of be worrying for anybody actually. But some good falls there in that sort of period of time for most people, even up to 40 mils in the west, which everybody will be quite happy about, but really sort of concentrated in sort of that Tuesday to sort of Wednesday lunchtime time frame. And let's have a look at GFS. pretty much as similar as Access, which EC, which is quite interesting in terms of GFS is a lot lower res. So GFS must have had some tweaks done, or they've done some work on it, because it's not bad at all. Um, Again, pretty similar falls, all coastal, some stuff pushing into land. So GFS is a lot more generous, gets up to 50 mils in the west of Sydney, almost 100 mils on the coast area. But again, nothing there that sort of screams flood threat warning, to be honest. And you can see here most of the sort of back of the catchment, which is where you really want to see if you're going to have anything that put pressure on that system. No, light falls, 20 mils at all. Um, I guess we'll see in the whatever the icon. Let's have a look. Yeah, no surprises with the icon. It's sort of become a shag on the rock. It'd be interesting to see what comes out of this in the end, in terms of which model sort of nailed it. Because it'd be good to do a regressive analysis on this, in terms of it, what the rainfall was and what the ultimate end sort of system looking like. As I can remember, that May event, there were plenty of people screaming East Coast low, and it did not turn out to be an East Coast low in any event. It did have some hybrid characteristics, but it was definitely just that nasty deep coastal trough. And in fact, in many respects, coastal trough, that sort of depth, a lot more severe weather producing in terms of flooding and that sort of stuff, as we saw, than lows are, because lows are intense sort of focus periods, and they tend to disappear quite quickly. Whereas the troughs, if they can hang around for that period of time and really just produce, because they're just accumulation events where it just rains and rains and rains and rains and rains. Whereas lows, you'll get those ebbs and flows in the convective bands as they sort of swap around. 1 minute you'll get sort of torrential sort of heavy falls, and then you'll get back off to sort of gusty sort of drizzly light fall. So you don't get that sort of intense period. You don't get that consistent accumulation sort of moderate period, where troughs can just really just produce incredible amounts of rain, as we saw back in May, with was it up to 800 mils something there in some areas of the Eastern Great Dividing Range up behind the hills of Taree there in Gloucester, incredibly so. All right, well, I think the 3 out of the 4 now are definitely going for pretty wet, wild, windy conditions tomorrow, and I think even Icon agreed in that in some respects. Tomorrow seems to be that sort of conditions, and then Wednesday is, I guess, where they diverge quite quickly, whereas the Icon seems to get captured and away from the coast before any sort of influence of that upper system, whereas the other 3 tend to maybe hang around a bit longer. I guess we'll see what works out in the wash, but in the end, next 24 hours particularly is going to be pretty wet and wild, and winds on the coasts are going to be pretty nasty. So just prepare yourselves. For those who like the rain, enjoy. Again, anybody sort of west of that sort of Hornsby through to sort of Campbelltown line, you're only looking at sort of 25, maybe 30 mils, maybe 40 mils, very much in the east. At this stage, we'll see. Let's go back to, we'll have a look at those winds quickly, what they were, just so you can get an idea again. Looking at the winds here, you can see they really start to pick up from around early tomorrow morning, getting up to 30 knots gusts, especially on that coastal fringe, and then they really ramp up from Tuesday lunchtime into that severe category. You can see here that purple, which is the severe category, and Tuesday afternoon looks pretty nasty, really, for the whole of the basin, to be honest. That sort of pinky stuff is late 30s. You can basically say there's severe winds in that severe category, so I'm expecting that we probably will see a severe weather warning go out from the Bureau, I reckon, anytime now, if not by lunchtime today, because there's definitely the severe winds anyway across Sydney on the EC version of things. Let's see the GFS. Well, I mean, it agrees. In fact, it's probably even stronger. Let's have a look at Icon. Icon, not so much. So if you were to average out the 3 models, and again, Access not so much, but if you average out the 3 models, I mean, Access does have it for the coast. It's definitely severe winds there. And then Access does actually put it into the rest of the basin by the evening. So, in any event, whatever happens, whatever system ends up being, I mean, you look at Icon there, that's classic, that's a beast of a low. Whatever happens in terms of whatever system comes out, I mean, there's some really savage, nasty winds there. There's up almost in the destructive category already. So, and all four models, tomorrow is wet, wild, with damaging to destructive winds, especially from lunchtime. As I said, so I expect to see the Bureau put out a severe weather warning from about lunchtime today, and obviously we'll keep you updated with any of those developments. But we want to just check that now for you, make sure that there's been nothing come out while we've been yabbering on here. Um, just a quick update. Hazardous surf, no surprises there, and nothing at this stage in terms of their warning suites, etc. But that normally comes out about lunchtime, I'd say. And it's normally about 24 hours before the event. So we saw on all the models there that there was that real upturn in winds from about mid tomorrow morning, maybe towards lunchtime tomorrow morning. And in that respect, whatever system we see just off the coast, it's going to be pretty damn hectic, especially tomorrow night. It's pretty nasty. I mean, you can see here, Sydney coast, nearly up to 60 knots. That's almost indestructible. It's going to be pretty bad. So, whatever rain falls, it's more the winds. We've been saying all along, it's going to be the winds. Whatever this system works out to be, the winds are absolutely going to be pretty nasty. So prepare your place and your family and friends, get them advised about that aspect of it. Isotarks, yes. Thank you for that, Mr. Diner. I did say it was one of those things. I think, didn't I say isotarks? I said isohydrates was, I think, equal pressure, if I remember. But isotarks, there we go. G'day, Mohammed. Love to see you. Media calling it bomb cyclone. Well, I mean, the media love a clickbait, warning, much like other sort of weather pages. And if you look at this from a lay perspective, you just look at a big hole with winds wrapping around it, you'd say it's a bomb cyclone. But if you delve into the nuances and the actual technicalities of it, I guess we'll see in the long term whether it actually gets to the true east coast low status, or it stays in a deep coastal trough status, or it gets into that Tasman low status again. Really, in all the models we've just seen, it really doesn't. It exhibits all those features and it exhibits none of those features. So tick a box, maybe all of the above. But it doesn't sell papers, it doesn't generate headlines unless you give it a nice catchy label. I've been at work for hours. I'm sure you'll have Mr. Ego camping. Definitely think on the coast it's going to be pretty hectic, regardless of if it's rain or not. I've said for days, as you can all agree and acknowledge, I've said for days, I think winds be the key feature of this. I think it's going to be nasty in terms of winds. I think, because here in the basin, we do tend to get quite a bit protected by those winds as westerly, especially those westerly winds. You get then those winter ones in August and September when they just destroy the Illawarra, and we don't tend to get them here. So we're a bit precious when it comes to winds. So when we get this sort of stuff here, it really does tend to knock us around a bit. And we're going to get them. Looking at these, all of the four models are going to give us a hammering tomorrow. And I expect anybody who's sort of flying out to think that there's a possibility the airport will be closed, I'd say tomorrow afternoon sometime, potentially. Looking at that, that's 44 knot crosswinds there. They're going to be closing the airport. They're going to be able to take the planes up there. So if you've got any travel plans tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow night, you can probably say they're going to be cancelled, I'd say. I don't think they'll be leaving, Thomas. Looking at that, I think your visitors will get in at all. I think the airport will be closed, as I said. I think it'll close from around. As soon as you start to see 39 and 49 southwesterlies across the airport there, and they don't really have the east-west runway anymore, and that's crosswinds. I'd be very surprised they take off from that. To be honest, where's Mr. Well? He'll know. In fact, probably ask Mr. Well because he'll know. He's an aviation geek, but I'm pretty sure my limited knowledge of aviation. That's those crosswinds are pretty much death to Sydney Airport in terms of closing it down. I guess we'll see, but yeah, I mean, I would just get a heads up saying I don't think your visitors are going to arrive tomorrow night with that sort of winds. Hello, Cooley. Central Coast is looking pretty much like Sydney, so you can bet it. You can probably anything that we sort of put out for Sydney next couple of days, very much for you guys. Although you probably will be looking at the winds, be spared the worst of the winds because of the way your coast aligns. Sort of that you can see here very briefly. They get very close to it but not as much as Sydney. And the way, because your coast goes from that southwest to northwest and northeasterly sort of alignment, a bit like the Hunter, it's going to be parallel to it, whereas Sydney does sort of butt out a bit, as you can see here, like a bird beak, and it does tend to catch them. But yeah, you guys, but pretty much everything else, you'll be pretty much the same as us. Wild, wet, and woolly, right through until sort of Wednesday lunchtime, maybe Wednesday evening. Again, you can see everything has it. Every model has it sort of disappearing and backing off by lots of lunchtime tomorrow, which will give the impression that it's almost like an East Coast low. I guess we'll see in the long term after the event what the regression or the reanalysis is. Hello, Cody. You're welcome. Thanks so much for that. Four-wheel drive and a couple of chainsaws. Thank you so much, EO Camping. That's great. The community all comes together. I think you're probably going to need the chainsaws, particularly. I designed the VA apron parking at Sydney Airport. Nice. Well, you should know then about the those wins. Um, yeah, definitely. So yeah, I'm guessing now you must be a bit of an engineer, please. Civil engineer if you're designing an apron. That's not a mechanical engineer which designs like air conditioning and bits and pieces like that. Civil engineer, I'd say. Um, Good job. No, they're definitely civil engineer. That's definitely a math person. Good, you can help me with my math calculations then. Um, but I'm just guessing as a 53 knot crosswinds on Sydney Airport is closing airport. Any event, I think. I know it's Mark. I didn't want to take a name because I know you're going under that pseudonym of Eagle Camping. I didn't want to actually disclose, I didn't want to dox you and, just, put you out there, everybody. But that's Mark, by the way. I wasn't going to say that, but I knew exactly who it was. Um, I was just being respectful of not doxing you. Um, all right, I need to get going, get ready for work. Have a great day. We'll keep you updated, of course. We'll definitely have a 6 o'clock update tonight, so tune in. And I think it's going to be a pretty interesting update because we'll have free fresh model updates and ECL drop as we're on stream. So we'll be able to see the latest and greatest. But again, we'll be moving more into nowcasting from here on in because, as I said, the models will be, and even now we're starting to see look at that, starting to see stuff starting to build out in the Southern Hunter already, in the Northeastern Hunter. What the hell? I don't know what drugs I'm on this morning. It's but already starting to shower, starting to push into that southern mid north coast as well. We're already starting to let's go zoom out and have a quick look. So definitely indication that trough is really starting to get going and organized. I really love that that satellite picture. Look at that, just absolute thing of beauty. You can see these little lines, which is that upper winds, the jet stream, that upper divergence, which is really keeping. You can see actually they're blowing to the south, and just dragging the dry airway, and just absolute stunning. All right, I've got to run because I was going to be late for work. All right, have a fantastic day. Thank you for those for your company, and see you at 6 o'clock tonight. Of course, keep your notifications on because we will be updating throughout the day as conditions change. Of course, I expect a severe weather warning to come out around lunchtime for tomorrow if those winds happen to be the case. Have an awesome day, and we'll be chatting to you.